1. Ben Folds defies Trump era with live album and tour. 2. Ben Folds explains his Kennedy Center resignation amid Trump takeover. 3. Ben Folds, a musical protest against authoritarianism. 4. Musician Ben Folds slams Trump picks Hissy fits at Kennedy Center. 1. Ben Folds defies Trump era with live album and tour. In a bold move that speaks volumes, Ben Folds has released a live album titled Ben Folds Live with the National Symphony Orchestra, a clear act of defiance against the recent administrative changes at the Kennedy Center. This release comes shortly after Folds stepped down as the first-ever artistic advisor to the National Symphony Orchestra, NSO, a position he resigned from just as the Trump administration took the reins at the Kennedy Center. But here's where it gets controversial. Was this album a parting shot, a subtle protest through music? Folds' tenure as artistic advisor began in 2017, during which he recorded the live album in October at the prestigious concert hall of the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts in Washington, D.C. His resignation, submitted just before the administrative shift, was part of a broader exodus that included notable figures like Shonda Rhimes and soprano Renee Fleming. On Instagram, Folds expressed his mixed emotions, stating, "Not for me. It's been a wonderful 8 years working with Kennedy Center President Deb Rutter, fellow artistic advisor Renee Fleming, and the entire NSO staff, encouraging thousands of fresh new audiences to appreciate symphonic music. Mostly, and above all, I will miss the musicians of our nation's symphony orchestra, just the best." The album itself, recorded over 2 nights, features Folds performing both his classic hits and new pieces, accompanied by special guests Regina, Spektor and Tall Heights. It is described as part protest, part celebration, a time capsule capturing the essence of a pivotal moment before significant changes. Folds shared with WKPK-FM Louisville, "I still believe there's more good than not. But you must work for it. You have to say something. Especially now." This release sets the stage for Folds' upcoming tour announcement at Birdland Records in Washington, marking his first public appearance in the capital since his resignation. The tour will see him performing across the United States this fall, collaborating with various orchestras including the Colorado Symphony, the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra, and the Louisville Orchestra. And this is the part most people miss: the power of music as a form of expression and protest. What do you think? Does Folds' album make a statement, or is it just another live recording? Share your thoughts in the comments below. 2. Ben Folds explains his Kennedy Center resignation amid Trump takeover. Ben Folds opens up about why he left the Kennedy Center amid Trump's controversial takeover, and why it's still hard to explain. Ben Folds recently shared some candid thoughts about his decision to step down as the artistic advisor for the Kennedy Center's National Symphony Orchestra earlier this year. In an interview with Midas Touch on Sunday, he admitted that while he firmly believes he made the right choice, he still finds it difficult to clearly explain the reasoning behind it. Folds was the inaugural artistic advisor for the NSO, serving from 2019 until his resignation in 2025. His departure came shortly after the Trump administration took control of the Kennedy Center in February, a move that shook the arts community. "I know I did the right thing," Folds stated with conviction. The musician elaborated that although he's not accustomed to publicly discussing decisions like this, he has long been an advocate for arts funding in the U.S. However, he reached a point where he felt he could no longer continue in his role at the Kennedy Center because he witnessed what he described as a severe abuse of power. "There's the straightforward reason why I resigned, but then there's the bigger question people often ask: why didn't you just stay and fight from within?" he explained. In the interview, Folds broke down the complex relationship between government, politics, and the arts, something many might not fully understand. He pointed out that typically, there's a strict separation, or a firewall, between political influence and artistic expression. This firewall protects what artists say, how they say it, and who gets to say it, leaving those decisions to the artists and the public rather than politicians. But that firewall was shattered in a massive way, Folds said. Trump dismissed the bipartisan board that used to oversee the Kennedy Center. Once that board was gone, he installed loyalists who then voted to make Trump himself the chairman of the Kennedy Center. This development was deeply troubling to Folds. It's alarming because now the leadership can directly influence what gets programmed, who is allowed to speak, and who is silenced at one of America's most prestigious arts institutions. When asked why he didn't stay to resist these changes from the inside, Folds admitted it's a tough question for him to answer. "I'm still figuring that out myself," he said, turning to the interviewer, Ben Mycilas, for perspective. Mycilas offered a compelling viewpoint: you don't want to be a puppet for a regime like that. Someone with your reputation and career can easily be used as a tool to legitimize their agenda. They'd say, "Look, Ben Folds supports me, so you should too." He added, "Trump thrives on celebrity endorsements. He repeatedly brings in figures like Kid Rock, but having an artist with deep intellectual credibility like Ben Folds on his side would be a powerful propaganda tool. That's why leaving was the right move, staying would just make you a prop for their narrative." The controversy began in February when Trump was elected as the chair of the Kennedy Center board. The center announced the leadership shakeup in a press release, stating, "At a Kennedy Center board meeting this afternoon, the board elected President of the United States Donald J. Trump as Kennedy Center board chair, replacing former chair David M. Rubenstein. The board also terminated Kennedy Center President Deborah F. Rutter's contract and announced Richard Grenell as interim Kennedy Center president. Alongside Trump, 14 new board members were appointed, including Susie Wiles, Dan Scavino, Allison Lutnick, and others, bringing the total number of trustees to 31. This takeover has sparked intense debate about the role of politics in cultural institutions. Should artists like Ben Folds stay and try to change things from within, or is walking away the only way to maintain integrity? What do you think? Is resignation a form of protest or a missed opportunity to fight back? Share your thoughts below. This is a conversation worth having. 3. Ben Folds, a musical protest against authoritarianism. The story of Ben Folds' departure from the Kennedy Center is one of artistic integrity and resistance to authoritarianism. When the Trump-installed leadership took over, Folds didn't hesitate to leave, knowing that the new regime would undermine the very mission he had worked so hard to build. As a longtime artistic advisor, Folds had spent 8 years nurturing innovation and programming with purpose, making him a formidable force in the artistic community. Folds' exit was not without controversy. He had just finished recording a live orchestral album with the National Symphony Orchestra, which would be released mere months later. The album, titled Ben Folds Live with the National Symphony Orchestra, is a testament to the power of music to bring people together and transcend boundaries. The album's release on July 4 was no coincidence. It was a deliberate statement, a musical middle finger to the creeping authoritarianism that threatened the very fabric of American culture. Folds' music has always been about more than just entertainment, it's about connection, community, and the human experience. At the heart of Folds' philosophy is a deep-seated optimism. "I still believe there's more good than not," he says. "But you have to work for it. You have to say something. Especially now." This conviction is reflected in his music, which balances sardonic humor with spiritual hope. The Kennedy Center, under Folds' guidance, had become a beacon for artistic innovation and inclusivity. He had helped pilot programs like Declassified, which introduced modern songwriters to orchestral arrangements without dumbing down the music or overpowering the orchestra with a PA system. It was about story, not spectacle. The trust between artists and venue, institution and public, was everything. When the new leadership promptly canned longtime President Deborah Rutter, Folds knew he had to leave. The arts were no longer valued under the new regime, and Folds couldn't look his friends in the eye and tell them it was okay to perform in a place that might target them for having an opinion. The Kennedy Center was never just a concert hall, it was an engine for civic and artistic connection. Folds had brought in young orchestrators, given them a platform, and made the orchestra the storyteller, not just the backdrop. The experimentation was a beacon for other orchestras throughout the private sector. This mission was rooted in access and equity. Thousands were enticed to come to the Kennedy Center, many for the first time, to experience all forms of art and music. You'd see someone on that stage who looked like you, no matter who you are, Folds says. That's a part of what the arts are supposed to do. Being mission-driven, not profit-driven, makes that possible. The arts are often one of the first targets in any authoritarian soft launch. They don't come for the tanks, Folds says. They come for the orchestras. They come for the books. That's what tells you what's really happening. Folds recounts how the Kennedy Center's own National Symphony Orchestra has a direct lineage to Soviet defiance. Mstislav Slava Rostropovich, a dissident who defected to the U.S., conducted the NSO for a decade and brought Shostakovich's censored work to American audiences. The Kennedy Center was Slava's sanctuary, Folds says. And it became mine. With Live with the NSO, Folds leaves behind a document, part protest, part celebration, entirely earnest in its ambition. The album features lush reimaginings of old favorites like Still Fighting It and Capable of Anything, the latter of which he describes as a warning shot. We're all capable of terrible things, he says. But we're also capable of doing better. That's the choice. Folds is especially proud of how the orchestration came together. I don't do the arrangements myself, but I'm all over them, he says. It's like assembling a web of orchestrators until it comes alive. The album plays like a requiem for a moment and a love letter to everything that moment made possible. There's humor, heartbreak, and conviction in every arrangement, and it all lands with the clarity of a final bow before the curtain drops. Except it's not the end, it's a rally cry. Because the show, despite everything, must go on. And Folds isn't going anywhere. Not quietly, anyway. As we reflect on Folds' story, we're left with a question: what role will the arts play in shaping our collective future? Will they be a beacon of hope and inclusivity, or a casualty of authoritarianism? The conversation starts here. Share your thoughts. 4. Musician Ben Folds slams Trump picks Hissy fits at Kennedy Center. Everything we knew about the Kennedy Center shifted when Donald Trump assumed control, turning a respected arts venue into a battleground between culture and politics. In a bold move, singer-songwriter Ben Folds, who spent 8 years advising the National Symphony Orchestra, resigned his post, calling the new environment toxic. But here's where it gets controversial. Trump's pick, Richard Grenell, a staunch MAGA activist, has been accused of using every public appearance to air personal grievances rather than championing the arts. Folds told the Washington Post that in his time inside the center, he'd never seen audiences boo a performer or guest, until both Senator J.D. Vance and President Trump were jeered at the D.C. Performing Arts Temple. He literally brought a circus with him, Folds said. Folds goes further, arguing that a leader of a national arts institution should dedicate himself to elevating music for everyone, not indulge in what he calls hissy fits or drift into partisan attacks. He points out that Grenell can't speak for 3 minutes without criticizing a political party, yet excellence in music shouldn't be politics' pawn. And this is the part most people miss: fulfilling artistic promises means leading by example, not lingering on grievances. Requests for comment from the Kennedy Center went unanswered. Should art venues remain apolitical sanctuaries, or is some political heat inevitable? Does Grenell's combative style threaten the center's legacy, or does it crack open long overdue debates about art and ideology? Join the conversation below. Do you side with Ben Folds, or do you think the new director is doing what's necessary?